All right, folks, so welcome back to another episode of The Last of the Millennials. We're probably right. I'm Farrelly Speaks.
I'm Kelsey.
And I'm Kendra Rochelle.
And thanks so much for joining us. Make sure that you are following us on social media at We Probably Right, on Instagram, Facebook, Anchor, anywhere you get your social media. And also you can find us on any platform that you get your podcast. Now today we've been having some conversations about what it's like to be Black in America. And I was talking to Kendra and Kelsey about an episode of Queen Sugar that really has had me triggered since last year. So if you've been living under a rock, or you're hearing this sometime in the future and you've never heard the name Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, or George Floyd, in March 2020, the United States and most of the world went through, started a global pandemic called COVID-19. During that time, a lot of civil unrest occurred, and particularly one of the things that really struck many Americans and caused riots in the streets and the burning of property and all these things was the death of George Floyd. Now, this death was particularly disarming for many in America because the things that we thought that could just be speculation or not true or people overreacting or Black people acting as victims really came to bear truth, because a little over 9 minutes of video film showed a man dying on camera while everyone watched. And till this day, it's been over a year, we're coming up on a year, that this has happened, and I still have not watched the video.
I cannot watch the video. I will not watch the video. I have been keeping up with the trial as it has recently taken off, but I cannot watch the video. One, because it hits so close to home. So he is from Fayetteville, North Carolina. His mother, stepmother, is or was formerly employed at my alma mater, and so I knew her. His sister, kind of, it's really, 6 degrees of separation in knowing, so I could not. So when they started playing, I remember vividly one snippet where he called out for his mom, and not connecting the two, but just to hear a grown man to call out for his mom. And I think they said that his biological mother is deceased. And he called out to her, and that triggered me because when my dad was in transition, he began to call out to his mother, who is deceased. So they say whenever you're about to go in, you start to see people who have already gone on to wait for you. So I have never watched the video.
Well, thanks for sharing that. Something else I learned about you today. And I didn't even put the connection because we're all from 910 Fayetteville, and then Rayford, that you had even had that closeness to that family. But the episodes of Queen Sugar, when they returned, started tracking the characters in the show and how they experienced the pandemic and the social unrest and the civil unrest. And this was the first time that I really had to come face to face with how sad I was about my Blackness in America. And this really just sets the scene for a lot of things. One, I was afraid to really admit to myself that this actually happened, that if I did not watch it, that I could pretend to myself that the degrees that I have, being a good person, doing what I'm supposed to do, doesn't really matter in America, and that I'm not protected because of those things. And every person who did not look like me, and even some that do look like me, might still see me as a threat as a Black man. And so that began the wheels of us thinking about kind of how do we show up in spaces, kind of what things that we do, and really reconsidering my blackness in America. And so as we went down this rabbit hole of how many different subjects we could talk about, kind of landed here with emotional intelligence. And
before we go into emotional intelligence, because us sitting on this platform, we have taken trainings and presentations. So for those who this may be a new term for them, let's define what emotional intelligence is, EI, EQ, and why it's important for us to have. And then let's deep dive and dissect it.
Okay. Oh, that's what I was going to do.
Oh, sorry. I didn't know that was what you were segueing into. So.
Yeah, so the emotional intelligence, the most basic term, is your ability to identify and manage emotions in yourself and someone else, right?
Excellent. Mm-hmm.
And so in the workplace, there's a lot of teaming that happens, and everyone comes from this different place of backgrounds, experiences, but emotional intelligence helps you to kind of stand outside of yourself, to understand how what you are doing or saying could impact other people, so that you can show up more positively in the workplace. Does that a good work for this?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. So that is the basis for emotional intelligence there. And the reason that we're talking about it is because, like Kelsey said, we go through these trainings all the time. It's a buzzword, but we want to talk about emotional intelligence as a means of survival for Black people. We were reading this article, and just want to make sure I can direct y'all to the right place. And the article is called Emotional Intelligence as a Form of Healing and Resistance for Black Workers by
Tomei, spelled T-O-M-I.
And I would say it's Akintunde.
Yeah.
It's really beautiful. Mm-hmm.
And so you can find this, she writes for Dropbox, so blog.dropbox.com. And in this particular thing, she talks about, we're not eating during this pandemic. So if you're experiencing this pandemic, some of us are not eating because of things that we've seen. Some of us, like me, have put on, some COVID pandemic weight. You're not sleeping well, okay? But we were once able to sleep and eat through all these things that have been happening to us until like this bubble kind of burst. And George Floyd was that next name on the list. She mentioned in the article that her list started with Trayvon Martin. That really marked the name of people who have died through unjust acts. And I remember where I was watching the trial. That was the last time I watched the trial, because it was clear at that point that we were not going to get justice by going through the justice system.
Yeah.
I think I was at a birthday party in Charlotte, and the verdict came down at like 8 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
And it was like, really?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, I remember, like for me, because I did watch the video. I watched that video. I watched Sandra Bland's video. I watched all of the videos. George Floyd's video for me was the moment that I stopped caring. That was the moment that I stopped caring, because it didn't matter anymore of what type of voice I used or what my demeanor was, if it was soft or if it was, acceptable. It didn't matter, because at the end of the day, I'm still Black, and I'm a Black woman, and I was never going to be accepted or obtain the things that I want. That were never created for me to obtain anyway. So that was it for me. And even in the article, she writes that we are expected to perform in identities that manage other people's feelings for their comfort before our safety.
Yeah, let's say that one more time.
Yeah, we are expected to manage or perform in other identities that manage other people's feelings for their comfort and for our safety. And I'm like, you know, we do this all the time at work. We call it code switching, you know, where I say all the time, Black people and white people communicate very differently. And that has a lot to do with how we're brought up and in our communities. But at work, you know, I gotta be careful how I say something because I don't want to be the aggressive Black woman. I don't want to be the angry Black woman. I don't want to be confrontational, even though, you know, Susan can come in and say the same exact thing and get a different result. And but that was the moment where I stopped caring. Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't say I stopped caring. I definitely will say Trayvon Martin, Mike Brown. I tuned out a little bit after that. And during the pandemic, I was pregnant, found I was having a little boy, and immediately felt suffocation. So the entire pandemic, any type of killing, murder of a Black man, I immediately froze in fear. Probably was a little depressed to know that now I am bringing in what is going to be considered a threat. I'm birthing a threat to America. And although I see this beautiful little boy who I know I'm going to do my best to raise, somebody's going to look at him and see him as a threat.
Yeah.
So when George Floyd, that big, tall, Black, handsome man, was on the ground crying out for his mom, my heart just broke into a million pieces. Like, oh my God, this could be my reality. This is my reality. I'm about to be someone's mom. So one thing that really, really bothers me about emotional intelligence is, and Black people happen to have it and amass this skill, is because we have this ability to we have to have this ability and skill set to compartmentalize our feelings in the face of persistent racial trauma, right? And it's, you know, emotional intelligence is really being aware of how emotions affect our own beliefs and behaviors and other people's beliefs and behaviors. And most of the time, I'm wondering, why do I need to learn this skill when they're attacking us? Like, why do I have to assess someone's feelings when we're the ones who are being misunderstood? We're the ones who are being misinterpreted. They need to be having these trainings. Why do we the more we lessen our footstep, the harder they press down. So it's just like, wow. So no matter how much we learn to say, to make our appearance, our tone, our presentation more palatable to them, the more work we do to fit in and try to make ourselves appeasing to them, the harder they push back. So it's kind of, you're damn if you do, damn if you don't.
I think it's because we don't have emotional intelligence at home, we automatically adopt what's supposed to be acceptable when we step out into the world, because we don't know how to verbalize, or we don't know how to say or speak, because, you know, we're raised to do what you're told, don't ask questions, sit down, do as I say, don't talk back, don't challenge me. And that's how we show up in the workplace. That's how we show up in the world. And then we adopt the things that we see.
But I think, you know, albeit all of that is true, when we are only taught what we were, you know, we only learn what we're taught and experience. And a lot of those things that we see were taught out of fear. So, you know, you were to be seen and not heard because you didn't want to be killed during Jim Crow and segregation, right? So it's the story of two pots, one ham. And this quick little story is, you know, on Thanksgiving Day, a mom is cooking a ham, and the daughter asks, you know, she makes the ham, she takes it out of one pot and then puts it in another. And the daughter's like, well, Mom, why don't you just use one pot? She says, well, that's how I've always seen it done. My mom always used two pots. So when the little girl goes and asks her grandma, why did you make the pot, you know, the ham like that? She said, well, my mom always made it that way. Then she goes and asks her great-grandmother. And her great-grandmother said, I simply just didn't have a big enough pot to make the ham, right? So a lot of the stuff that we do it because we think it's traditional, right? So culture and conflict are one and the same. It's, for Black people, it's rooted in fear, in, just enough to survive, right? So anytime we were brought up in our homes, I know in my home it was do as I say, not as I do, don't talk back. Any type of opposition or a thought that was of my own that challenged an adult became conflict immediately. And it's like, I know you're not asking me that.
Yeah.
So, which ultimately diminished my communication skills because I wasn't able to advocate for myself in a space where that person loved me and I knew they loved me and that they know they love me as well as, in exchange. But it hurt me that, on a personal, professional level, that when I made it out into the world, because I was diminished at home in that manner, I'm not able to present and show forth that way in the workspace.
Right. I think we're saying the same thing. Yeah, we're saying the same thing. We're saying the same thing.
Well, I just wanted to go into, into that because some people don't link those together.
Yeah, so what I was speaking to more so was your statement about why do we have to get emotional intelligence? Why are they not in the training? And the thing is that they have been in the training. They've mastered it. That's why when the woman told you weaponize your tears, that's a part of emotional intelligence. I've adjusted my demeanor to get a result from you that I need. And we don't do that. We'll sit there cold, or it was perceived to be cold, and we'll take it. Those tears, and you like, oh shit, what the fuck is going on? She crying. And nothing in us says you need to react.
My reaction is, do you need a moment?
Right.
And I will kindly slide you a box of tissue.
But we know what happens is on the documentation says that you were not sympathetic to your peers' needs. Right. And then you're looking aggressive because you didn't know how to weaponize your tears, or you didn't know how to use your emotional intelligence to counteract what they were dishing out. And that's what I was thinking, talking about when you were saying that, why do we need to? We need to for a plethora of reasons. One, because we don't even know how to have conversations in our own family.
Right.
We don't know how to say, hey, I hear you, and this is what we're going to do. Like even when disciplining children, like you said, don't say nothing, don't talk back. How is that teaching you how to weaponize your words when you get out into the world and you have to be amongst people that don't look like you, and they're already armed with how to manage their emotions, how to use their words, and we're not. So then it's like, how do we change that narrative, and do we start introducing emotional intelligence within our homes and with our children and practicing those things so that they are more effective when they're out in the world and not just become worker bees because they don't know how to say or advocate for themselves and say anything at all.
I love the conversation. I think I want to try to tie a bow around it, because code switching, or the way that we show up to get results and also protect ourselves, as an educator, we're teaching this over and over again. And so I've been really conflicted with that, because I'm like, this is professionalism is rooted in whiteness.
Yeah.
I remember watching something the other week, and a native person in United Kingdom who was in Parliament was like, I'm not going to wear a tie because it likes putting a noose around my neck.
Yeah.
And I never even thought about it like that. I'm like, we wore suits to church. And so that was my first kind of like, we wear church, but I want to look good for the kingdom.
For the Lord.
We put on our best when we come into the church.
Yeah.
But then when you go into more learned spaces, that is now the new apparel that gets you acceptance, because we say you only have one first chance to make a first impression.
Yeah. And they always tell you, if you look important, people will treat you like you're important.
And I'm gonna put a pin in right there in that point. And go talk about clothing, right? I was reading another article before somebody's dissertation who's in fashion, and they linked back to church dress. And also linked it back to slavery. So most times slaves were the people who were making the clothes for everybody on the plantation.
Yeah.
They used clothing in one or two ways to either denote your status.
Right.
So if you worked in the fields, you had mostly what Kanye West has put out,
Shabby shanty clothing.
This clothing that is very blah
Shabby shit.
and very like ugh. But if you work in the house,
Yeah.
you were presented with these more bright colors. You dress
Pressed,
more
yeah.
like them. You were well put together, and so immediately there was this distinction
Yeah.
about how you looked is how people perceived you.
Right.
And so that has traveled all the way back to 2021, and we're
Yeah.
still telling people that in order for you to be accepted,
Yeah.
is you have to show up a particular kind of way.
Yeah.
And I struggled with that because there was always this thing about white people are watching, and everything I did was to make sure that if a white person saw me, I didn't bring any dishonor
Yeah.
to those people who were connected to me. We were talking earlier
Yeah.
about group think. And Kelsey was like, well, why? I was like, well, because that's just how we do it. It was on Queen Sugar, and Nova asked the white guy she was dating, if you see a white person do something that's embarrassing, how does it make you feel? He said he doesn't feel any kind of way because that has nothing to do with him. But black people, when, what was it? It was the DC sniper.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, when
It was like,
We found out
we know you white.
it was like, oh God,
Oh,
no.
Lord,
Oh God.
He crazy.
But I only felt that because everybody else felt that. But
Yeah.
it wasn't until I got older where I was able to differentiate, like, what he eat don't make me shit. Like, that's, unless, like,
It
okay.
don't, but in fact, what you eat to make you shit.
Well,
Yeah.
listen. So here is, like, if you did that, I'm like, oh my God, I'm embarrassed.
Yeah.
But now, in my quest to live in a white woman's world and get those rose-colored glasses as well, because I want to challenge and support you on your comment and about white people learning emotional intelligence. I think we're being taught what they're saying is the same thing, but two different textbooks, right? So you're saying white people know emotional intelligence because they want to know what to do to cause, and we have to know how to react. So they're challenged. What are you going to do to get a rise out of people to get what you want? But we are always being taught the defense to make sure you react in a way that you are palatable for the people. Opposed to, no, you need to act the same way that they're acting and see if they can handle it. They need to be learning how to react to when you say something, Sally, and Kelsey says it back to you in the same manner. You don't get emotional. Like, you're able to step back, and I don't think it's taught full circle for them.
But
Like,
it doesn't have to be.
right.
But it doesn't have to be. So
But teach me how to what makes Sally angry whenever she is, Now, granted, I have that skill.
I think that's wishful, but we all know that's not how that works, and we all know what the consequence of that could be. And when we show up in that way, historically,
it is.
But let me try to understand what you're saying. All right, because earlier the comment was, when I understood it, those who are in a position of power can weaponize the fragility that they have. For example, your white tears.
Yes.
Right? If a white woman starts to cry, everybody's going to be like, oh my God, and forget the person who's actually in trouble or
in duress,
being
right.
pain. So you're saying, how do you reverse the roles, or how do we train them to feel our pain? What's the...
So we're taught to make ourselves appear to be softer and have that empathy with it, right? And it's as if they're saying, I had a white woman in a conference say, sometimes you have to weaponize your tears. And it's like, wait a second, what? In my role, and they're saying women, are not really picked for this role because it's a conduct role. So when you think conduct, you think consequences and repercussions and all these things, you think a man. So when they're met with a woman, sometimes, those crucial conversations, you have to weaponize your tears. And it's like, oh, I wasn't. That's not what I learned when I got the role. It's, you have to be fair, you have to be this, I was given this whole script, and this lady just literally came out and said, sometimes you have to weaponize your tears to get your way. And it's like, wait a minute, where in your book did you read that? And I didn't get that.
That's their life. That's the thing. We're constantly going by the book that they wrote for us to follow, so they can follow the other book.
The answers in
right.
the teacher's
right. That's what I'm saying. So like, that's what I'm saying. Where's their book?
We're not gonna get that book.
We're not gonna get the book.
Somebody stole the key. Somebody had to. And that's
but that is the key, is learning that, like learning those things that they use and weaponize them, because we too busy always trying to be fair. Yeah. We too busy.
I'm no longer trying to be fair.
Right.
So now I have, I do my little studies and I try to get in on, and I understand that in other cultures, particularly the white community, they have a tier system too. Mm-hmm. So, not trying to be funny, but the bottom of the barrel, bottom totem pole of white people might as well be black, right? Ooh. Might as well be black. You listen, come hear me out.
Please.
Listen. I mean, not black, but they treat it bad. If you're trailer park trash or, just poor scrungy white people, you might as well be black to them. They don't pay them any attention. Now, what they won't do is embarrass them in front of black people. But they are definitely treated terrible. Like they don't fit in with the rest of the more cultured white people.
Okay.
But are they above black people? Absolutely, yes.
Are you processing for real?
Yeah, it seems like it's very hard to process.
It's not hard to process. It's just listening to you say that is the trying to figure out what I'm going to say. Because
I'm not saying they're black. You might as well be black. No. But they get treated as if they're second class citizens.
They get treated by whom is I think
by their white counterparts,
which is what doesn't matter.
It does matter.
They are still white.
Right.
Our oppression. They're not oppressed by other white people. They're just not included.
Which is
because they're made whatever choices, but we never even had a chance to be excluded.
No, I can see that.
Because if you're a white person, regardless of your socioeconomic status, you still are a white person. In every place that you show up in the earth, you are a white person.
Classic example, hillbilly elegy. Born as quote unquote white trash. Parents from the mountains, mom drug addict, went to Harvard and became the other white person. So he still had a chance. We can never change. We can never elevate. We can never become. We can never cross over to inclusion. They can.
Well, I get what you're saying, but I want to make sure people listening can be clear that there is a delineation, particularly because it's about, because there are different conversations, right? In other countries, it's not about your skin color. It's about your ability to have finances.
Right.
Whether you white, black, green, or yellow, they're going to treat you based on the amount of money that you have.
Right.
You could be a billionaire black person and still be treated worse than a white trash person. Because if they don't know who you are, you still black.
Well, yeah.
You buy beans, you still a nigga.
That is the determining factor. Like, how did you even get in this space is the first question. Because you don't qualify.
Right.
That's a whole nother conversation but that goes back to what was said earlier about working harder.
Yeah.
Like we have, as black people, we've had to show up in spaces working harder, staying late, and we're thinking we're doing a good thing, working to the bone, because we want to be a good employee. But people could say, well, why aren't you managing your time better during the day?
Yeah, very much so.
What?
But like to Kendra's point, like she said, like she said, it's the worker bees, and those are the ones. And I used to be that, like, priding myself on being able to get the job done, but then you'll find yourself abused and misused, baby.
I tell people all the time, I said, when you leave, they gonna say, nobody asked you to do that.
Nobody asked you to do that. One person said that to me one time, and I said, you'll never have to. I'm leaving at 5 o'clock. Bye.
But it's the thing that we're taught is that we have to work twice as hard to get twice as far. And
no, to get half as far. You don't even get that.
Twice as far.
Yeah, you don't get to it. You gotta work twice as hard just to get half as much.
And that sentiment, and we all have heard it.
We've definitely heard it.
Yeah.
But
have we embraced it?
I have absolutely not embraced it.
You sure?
We have.
You at some point, because if not,
at some point, yes,
you wouldn't be where you are.
I
even
think
tried.
What I have noticed is I have tried, but I feel like what I have learned by being able to make it into spaces where I see people scale the ladder. And I'm like, what the heck are they doing that I'm not doing?
Emotional intelligence.
They're doing less.
They're doing less. It's the networking.
Yeah.
And it's like, I want to be in that, like, where's that playbook? That's like, I don't want to sit over.
That's the emotional intelligence. So like, that's what it is. Networking. I don't have to do all this work, but I'm going to use my emotional intelligence to make this connection here, to make this connection here, and we're going to have this relationship. Meanwhile, black girl in the back that don't know how to have conversation, don't know how to make connections or relationship, working hard, coming in early, leaving late. She's still sitting there.
Yeah, and it's just, there are some things that I didn't realize that going to conferences exposed me to different things outside of working in a black space.
Yeah.
So I would stay up and go to those after hour, meetings at the bar, going to these social networks because it put me in the conversations to know, oh wow, sitting here discussing emotional intelligence with 3 black people who may not have gone to a conversation would not challenge you to understand, like, all white people don't view white people the same, y'all. And I'm telling you this because I heard it because she said this. And I noticed that simple things like watch TV shows that you normally wouldn't watch. And my dad would always say, what good is being the jack of all trades when you're the master of none? Always be able to know a little bit about everything, right? So she talking about Will and Grace. I can't tell you a whole lot about Will and Grace, but I can tell you it's damn sure funny. Yeah. And they are hilarious. Yada, yada, yada. Go on. But just to be in that space to say, they're networking off of the trivia. Like, we're talking scholarly stuff, and they're talking about the difference between Virginia Slims and Misty cigarettes. Just things, or the fact that I mean, really, the smallest, or the difference between a stout beer and a pale ale. Yeah. And if you don't drink beer,
We tell you, if you don't know, you just get what they have and then drink that shit. If you don't like it, you still drink it.
Yeah. You order one and you say, so tell me what the difference is between being able to acting interested in what they're talking about, opposed to just sitting back and saying, oh, I don't know. Yeah. Or I don't drink that, or I don't like that.
Kelsey, what are you listen to what you're saying?
Yeah, I'm definitely I'm code switching
for your benefit.
To get in there.
And they say in your safety. It's the same thing.
Yeah. The safety and security of my lifestyle that elevates. Yeah. Because y'all telling me to get all these degrees.
And that's not really it, sis. It won't get you in the door if you don't know the right people.
Yeah. And that's why I'm out here talking to Jen at 10 o'clock at night to become her good Judy like everybody else, because ultimately it's about me knowing her opposed to knowing how to key 20,000 pages in whatever, time frame. So yeah, if that's what it means, I got to break my comfort zone to, that.
It's amazing though.
Do you like a flat almond white?
Yeah, sure. I know that is.
Listen, or what is it, Americano? That is a black coffee on ice. It tastes like dirt water.
But those are the things, right? When you start talking about, you're doing all these things so that people will like you. It's so for like elementary school.
It is.
Right? Because I need to get in good with a good crowd of people so that I don't become the person that they pick on.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's just, it exists in every stage of life.
And it exists in every culture too.
Yeah. But I mean, I really hate comparing black. I don't want to have the Olympics of struggles.
Yeah.
But I do always want to be clear that there is a difference.
It is. It's definitely a difference.
Yeah.
Because people can hear this and it may justify, but I want people to be able to break free from that self-loathing mentality, that there's something that you have to do in order to be accepted by a group of people. And if that's what you desire to do, because I'm all about people having choices, if that's what you want to do, I just want you to be conscious of the game that you're playing. But I also want you to know that you can find spaces where you are celebrated and you can be your full authentic self.
Yes.
Or you can start a business and be self-employed and employ other people and create the kind of space that you want to see. And something else I think that stood out that I wanted to, that we talked about earlier, and this came from a Business Review article. It says that the consciousness and practice looks like code switching. Code switching is a behavioral adjustment that involves adjusting one's style of speech, appearance, behavior, and expression in ways that will optimize the comfort of others in exchange for fair treatment, quality service, and employment opportunities. I'm guilty of a lot of this stuff.
100%.
Let me tell you, like, this hair underneath this cap, right? I always wore a close fade cut because it was professional.
Yeah.
And I did not want my hair or the way that I showed up into spaces for people to think I could not represent the company appropriately. That it might make people feel uncomfortable. But after 2020, there was this whole new awakening about how I show up in spaces.
Yeah, I think that's it's crucial, because I think we were listening to Ricky Smiley video the other day. His rebuttal about the accusation of being responsible for his nephew's death. Now, I don't agree that he was responsible, but he did say some things in there about having, him cut his dreads off and put on a suit, and it was very traditional of him and very stuck, because I'm like, I don't want to, because I've relaxed my hair before when I was natural to, start a new career, and I regretted it. My hair fell out and stuff. I wear a short hairstyle now by choice because I think it looks better on me. But listening to that whole thing, like adjusting your entire appearance, how your hair grows out of your head, how you're most comfortable, just so that somebody else can accept you and say, I think you're good enough for me to pay you.
Because ultimately, their narrative drives our emotions. And like you said, I remember it wasn't until leaving one place that was, really conservative. I never wore my hair natural.
Yeah.
And I would relax. It would be, bone straight.
Yeah.
Severely damaged because it would be so straight.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until it's like, oh wow, I need to go to a place where my hair and me, we are celebrated and not tolerated, and grow it out. Some days I, just let my hair do what it does.
But that's a privilege of being in black spaces too.
It is. There are, and let's talk about those privileges.
But I've only worked in black spaces, and I still felt the need to show up differently. This hair just started growing a year ago.
So do you feel like in black spaces, because I've only predominantly worked in white spaces, so do you feel in black spaces that they're a little bit more aggressive to show up white?
Yes.
Yeah, because
they have something to prove
to them. Yes, to everybody that a black-run establishment can be as successful as one that's majority white.
Right.
That's my perspective. What do you think?
I definitely think so, but I think it is it's an extremely toxic nature when you get in there and you see it's almost as if when you see all of these beautiful black people in a room, how toxic it is, because it's an innate, it's in our DNA that naturally it's a competitive like you feel it in the room, like, oh, such and such, I've seen women come in stepping to the nines, will walk across campus in their heels, in their sneakers, and by the time they hit the door, heels on, because they have to present, they have to show up, they have to show out. And they're putting on for each other to show that, yes, we can,
Yeah.
And it don't even have a...
Can't even work the printer, okay? Can't pick up the phone.
Don't know. What you will say is,
they look damn good.
And
she put on every day.
One of my mentors, bless our heart, Sharon Hoare, would always say, we can teach you how to walk and chew gum. We done did something. People be impressed with you.
Yeah. I heard that too in undergrad.
It's such a low threshold. If you don't know enough, just make sure people look like you.
But that's literally what they do.
But that's
what they teach you.
Yeah.
But I remember my freshman seminar teacher, and that's where she said, just if you don't know, keep your mouth closed, because they will assume that you know until you open your mouth and prove to them that you don't.
Right. But is it wrong though? Because being likable is so valuable. It is a lot of power in being liked.
Absolutely.
And being likable. Like, you don't have, it's a lot of people that don't know shit.
Yeah.
And our directors and executives and all,
absolutely.
But people like them.
Yeah. It's definitely. And
Go ahead, tell me. Go ahead.
So Farrelly and I were co-workers, and when we first met, he was like, I know you. I was like, no, you don't. I don't know you. He's like, I know you. So anywho, we ended up starting working together. It started out very rocky, but
what for you?
It was very rocky and traumatizing, actually. Excuse me, man. Yes, it was. It was all of that. It was a haze, okay? But all that to say, we were like a power couple team, right? Because when Farrelly would walk through the room, people would immediately tense up in fear. And they would see, I don't know why, I don't think Farrelly is as giant as I originally thought he was.
Yeah.
Not as in big, but tall.
Yeah.
Because people would cower when he would walk through, because Farrelly walks with this expediency and urgency, I have to be on to the next, and it walks with an executive look. And people who did not have their shit together would be like, what?
That's church.
Listen, and
that's church.
Listen, and
that's how the pastor walks through. That's how you walk through. Yeah.
Farrelly walks through as if he's about to clear the room, and I will come in there and I'll be like, all right, guys, make sure you have this, and this, and everybody's so. What's this Farrelly have? And I'm like, I don't know. I would have to soften the room a little bit. He's not that bad, y'all. Just make sure y'all have y'all shit together so we can go ahead and move forward. Yeah. But people just saw him before he would even open his mouth. Oh my God, you better have this, and this, or he's going to whatever. But it also rubbed people the wrong way sometimes, because they never even spoke to him, never knew him. They assumed that was him. It's like, yo, he's really actually pretty cool. You should talk to him. Just don't mix work and pleasure. That's what you can't do.
Yeah. And
so he was kind of blackballed at first because people assumed that he was nasty.
Yeah.
And that wasn't the case. They were like, oh my God, Mr. Farrelly is so sweet.
I was blackballed. I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I never experienced it.
Because
guess who I wasn't blackballed from?
I know.
The vice president of
right.
Student Affairs, who was the main person in charge. So
yeah, and they ended up getting blackballed. But nonetheless.
But I still wasn't.
It were the lower people who just tried to make shit harder than what it had to be. But luckily he had a me where it was certain things that he never had to touch, that because it was me, okay, I made the relationship to be like, oh yeah, such and such, and then eventually, all right, y'all, this is Farrelly, and they would get to know him, and then they established their relationship. So it was about him being liked. And then I know when he moved on to his new place, he was like, I don't know what I'm gonna do with these people. Da da da. And yeah, but you're here. But it took, people have to grow on to, understanding that if you're not liked, they don't want to know what you can do. They just want to know, can I like you? Yeah. Because for me, I had a former supervisor say, I don't have to like you to work with you. I'm polar opposite. I have to like you because it takes more energy for me. Listen, because I'm an empath, it takes more energy for me to ignore you than for me to actually just be like, I like you enough to be cordial. But if I have to focus on not liking you, like, I cannot speak to this bitch Kendra because I don't like her.
Yeah.
Like, I'm boiling over trying not to speak to you and not engage you, opposed to, girl, we here for 8 hours a day. I at least need to like you somewhat. Yeah. It's not sad.
It
I thought it
is.
was. So I tried to
That's
tell,
sad.
but that's how
It's
she's on vibes and stuff.
Yeah, I'm on
I
vibes.
can separate that. If we're working and I don't like you, I can separate
I
that.
can.
We can work because it's
I
just
cannot.
work.
It
It's
is.
just work.
It's
I can
just
say,
work.
So I can say, Kelsey, did you do that project? And you say no. Okay. It's because you don't mean that much to me.
No, it's not about meaning that much to you, but I'm like you said, I'm a vibe and and you coming in my space like because it's, you know, although I have been educationally trained, it's still a street, you know, foundation.
That's what I'm saying.
So I don't like you.
So
don't
me
be
not
in my
liking
space.
you, don't fuck with me.
It impacts the work because I don't want you around me. It
Yeah.
impacts the work because I don't want you around me. I don't want you in my space. I don't want to see you. I don't care about your work. But the education part of me is like,
I want you to overcome that.
it's like I don't want
you have through that though.
I have.
I can't
I have not.
I cannot tell.
That's interesting, Kelsey,
I have-
because what you say is not what I experience. So it's interesting to hear you say that. But the point was that.
But you have not seen me not like somebody.
I have.
You have not. You have not seen me. You've seen
I've
me.
seen 2 people at work. So we talk about this off camera.
Yeah.
But the point is that you were making is that it's better to be liked. And I tell people this when I'm hiring people. I look at your credentials, yes, but I'm having a conversation with you, trying to understand, because I'm gonna spend a lot of time with you.
Yes.
And if
Which is
I
why I
don't like you,
Yeah.
or think that I won't like you, or your personality is going to cause an issue, then you're less likely to be the number one candidate.
Yeah.
You can have it all, and that weighs very heavily. And your credentials, because it's about, there's talk about fit
versus
which
function.
is sometimes is a scapegoat for people, but for me it truly is about fit, because you're building teams and building things and you want to make sure people come in and continue to add to what you're doing and not disrupt the flow. But being liked is super important, but not being liked at the expense of not being yourself. And so what I was saying is that if that's the road that you choose to go down, you need to clearly know that you're making this choice to do this in order for an expected end. I don't think that, I know that for the most times that we're teaching people these things to code switch and to change their appearance and all these other things, is we do it so we can get them out the door and on to the next batch in education. Because if you present well, and we say this all the time. I say this to students when I first got to career fairs. If you show up in here with your jeans, or let's say your hair not pressed, your hair not combed or neat, your clothes wrinkly, you're going to make it harder for the next students that come after you that are associated with this brand. When recruiters leave, they're going to say this about these people at this place because of what you did.
Yeah.
And that goes back to the group.
Yeah.
Think.
Yeah.
Right? They're going to paint, it's not black people, but even with organizations.
Yeah.
If you're a representative of NBC and you show up like this, it's like, this is how everybody at NBC works. And NBC gets cut out of advertising for billions of dollars because of how somebody showed up.
But on the adverse side,
I think that's important because my brother likes to tell this story about when because he went to Shaw and he got a job at Kmart. And when he started, they let him know that the last guy was black and from Shaw, but he had stole from them and robbed them. So he immediately felt this pressure to overcome the reputation that the last guy left for him. So he spent his time working there, working hard, making sure he was the best stalker and always over counted the money so they can trust him. So at the end of the summer, it was time for him to go back to school. They were like, "Oh man, we feel bad. We misjudged you."
They'd already judged him
based off the last guy
when he
that worked there.
He didn't even get half as far.
Right.
But this
He didn't get no steps.
is based off the group think theory, or we all represent each other.
Yeah.
Like we all have this unspoken responsibility to be responsible because I'm representing you, whether they know that we know each other or not.
Ooh, I ain't going to that one.
No.
But it's something, as much as we don't like it, it's in the fabric of our country. And we can individually make choices.
Yeah.
And we can create corporations so that people can come into our businesses and they can experience what it's like to be valued as a whole person. Because I remember being in a training and they was like, don't come to work and be 100 of yourself if being 100 don't align with the company brand. We might need you to be 50. Now I'm gonna keep it 100. We need you to keep it 50 because 100 gonna get you fired.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, and it's just that simplest thing is like, do you align with whatever it is that you're seeking acceptance for?
Yeah.
What if I think I don't put I don't put a lot of emotion behind it of not understanding the two, because I was taught at a very early age by my dad, who witnessed, integration was part of that, to understand, like, I'll never have the opportunity to be you never have the opportunity to be yourself 100% of the time, so get used to it. So all of this, like, yeah, I get to see how how white people do theirs, how black people do theirs, because I had an older parent.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like, well, why don't we this, and this? My dad was like, just face it. I don't care what, no matter how much education you get, no matter how far up the ladder you climb, you're never, ever in your life going to get to be 100% yourself all of the time.
But I think there is a point.
Mm-hmm.
And it really depends on, I'm always talking about ownership these days.
Yeah.
If you are an employee, you do have to give in to what that looks like to maintain your financial standings in life. I will say the higher that you climb, the more you use emotional intelligence to network, get in a good old boys club. Yeah. You get more passes and you get benefits that you never knew existed.
Right.
Because of your place in the position. Now, if you own something, you call the shots.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now that I know, because I just woke up to this, right? It was like, own it, why I'm going to do all that? Well, why I'm going to do all this for somebody else?
Right.
And if you own it, you can set what the culture is.
Yeah.
And that is doing your part to help to shift the narrative and the framework of code switching, changing your appearance. Like, I pick at Kendra. A lot of us pick at Kendra because
a lot of us
who've experienced
this,
right?
Yeah.
She's doing it now. She just did it. She does it so well. It's the using a dulcet tone, which is like a sweet tone. So even when I answer the phone, you say I'm on a customer service thing at work, and it's like you answered the phone pleasantly.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
There's a way. No, not oh, yeah. Right? Because pleasantly is also racist. Right? I'm like, hello, this is Farrelly. How can I help you? That's not a pleasant tone.
The ghetto. Woo, child.
They want you to, hello, this is Farrelly. How can I help you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Two totally different things. The second one is not me. That is not how I talk.
Yeah.
And there's a great movie out where the guy was working in the call center. I need to find the name of that movie.
Oh, with Stanfield.
What's the name?
Keith Stanfield.
Where they turn into horses and stuff? Or no?
I don't know if they turn.
He was in the call center, and this guy taught him how to. He was a sales guy. And he taught him how to change his voice to get more sales to a white voice.
Yeah.
That movie.
But I mean, that's what they teach you in call centers. That's what they teach you.
But that's what I'm saying though, all of that is to disarm the people on the phone to get your goal.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my God, I can't even who I am and how I speak is
sorry to bother you.
Is not professional.
Yeah.
And we don't even notice how these things continually knock us down from our normalcy or being our authentic selves because it's just so natural.
Yeah.
To do it.
But it happens, and my brother likes to say it too because he told my nephew one day, he's like, you want to know how to talk? Call your aunt. She's really great at it. And I don't think, it's really subconscious at this point because I never, it was since 7th grade, but I never talked that much differently. It's just more polished now. But I never talked that much differently, but it does come with a certain, I have friends that speak way different than me, and it's always aggressive, like they get in trouble at work, like you're too aggressive and you say it, and I'm like, wow, so how did you say it? And then I was like, it was a little harsh.
What?
But why? So can we differentiate the difference between being aggressive and direct?
No.
It's the same.
You think so?
Yeah, it is exactly the same.
It's the same.
Because I'm the direct person and I get called a bitch all the time. But I had to switch it up, right? I had to smile.
I mean, I taught you that.
No, I didn't get it. You may have, but
I did.
It may be back in there. But I had to learn that my impact
And say good morning. Definitely.
Your intentions don't mean shit.
It's the
those
delivery.
people say,
It's always the delivery.
the road to hell was paved with good intentions.
I was taught in one of the last trainings I ever had about personality flexing when you talk to people, and so it's like it shows up a lot. For me, it shows up a lot.
Tell us what personality flexing is.
So it's basically like code switching, except for the alternate of that is if someone is being aggressive, how to disarm them.
Oh, yeah.
But if they're not, you adapt to whoever you're talking to. And anybody who's around me a lot, they'll see it happen. And I don't even always recognize it, but it will happen. I will just automatically, doesn't matter who, old people, I switch. White people, I switch.
Oh, yeah.
Kids, I switch. Yeah. It always switches, no matter who it is. And that's what I was taught for that job, but it stayed with me outside of it. Because I figured out that everybody does not receive the conversation the same way.
Right.
So if I learn how to talk to you, and talk to you, and talk to you, and talk to you, I can get everything I want from all of y'all. And all I did was talk to you differently.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But that's the good part of emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
Because that is where you're tapping into the good parts of understanding how people communicate.
Yeah.
And if you're a manager, understanding that you can't communicate to people the same way.
Right.
The same result.
But you learn that in a different format of, your learning styles and teaching styles.
Yeah. So
I guess all of that is all.
So one of the things I use to disarm people is so if I come in, Kelsey, and you being nasty, oh, this fucking bitch, I'm gonna be like, are you okay today?
I'm not. I'm gonna say,
she said that to me yesterday.
and I'm gonna say I'm not.
And I'm like, okay. Do you need anything?
I don't need anything.
Okay, well, just let me know. Because see, whatever you was attempting to project, block. And you why you have no choice but either dismiss yourself from my presence or adapt.
Are you patronizing?
And I'm just like,
no.
I do it all the time.
She did it to me yesterday. I was in my own space. I was in the room, chilling. So probably like 8 o'clock at night, she was like, hey, Forelli. I said, she probably think I have an attitude or something. What are you doing?
I used to do that. But I was like, are you okay today?
But do you get, that is another, to me, that was a whole nother thing, right? People, if I tell you I'm okay, right? People like, are you sure?
Yeah, it has a tone to it.
Yeah.
It has a tone to it. Are you sure? Okay.
Because that's the door that when I say, are you sure? That's me cracking the door to say, all right now, come on through it.
But again, we wouldn't have to do all these things.
Right.
If this system didn't exist. Right?
Here we are.
It's so unfortunate. And so basically, this emotional intelligence piece, it's so much. And it is not, at the end of the day, it don't protect you from your name being added to a list.
It does not.
Of people who've been disarmed, murdered, killed, assaulted because of who you are. So,
if anything, you're still on there because of it.
yeah.
Keep your hands on the steering wheel. Don't wear a hoodie. Keep your hands up your pockets. Announce what you're doing. You're not protected.
Yeah, and it really gets frustrating. I think the narrative that came up with when Black Lives Matter, the phrase Black Lives Matter, the organization, and there was this counter narrative about like all lives matter, and it's just one of those things where it's like, really, y'all? The one time we find the ability to speak out for ourselves, to try to break out of that cycle, it's like, what? Like, clearly people don't understand. They have no clue what it's like to be Black in America.
No.
Because that lived experience is so much different, even if you're a poor white trash person.
Why would they want to know that experience?
They want to know the parts of it that they think are cool. The parts of it that are commercialized, that are sold, that come across their TV screens. Like, Black people made it. You're on TV, but those same Black people get locked up for the same things my brothers and cousins get locked up for. And it makes no difference where we are and where we have made it to. And I think if you watch Green Sugar by a couple seasons ago, the son of the basketball player was driving this expensive car.
Yeah.
And there was this traumatic scene that impacted him so much. And the more I think about it, Queen Sugar just had so many
jewels,
things that mimic our real life and things that we have compartmentalized so much that we don't even recognize it.
Right.
Think about it. Like, even now, normalizing Black women in luxury. That is a thing.
Yeah.
We have to normalizing me carrying $1,000 bag.
But I got a problem with that, though.
Why?
Not the
why?
Beyond that.
Beyond that, like
a Black woman taking a spa day. Like, just take material out of it. Taking a vacation, flying first class, driving a luxury
that's
vehicle.
a luxury.
No, I understand.
All of that stuff that you're saying is a luxury. We have to explain why I want to fly first class because, bitch, it's crushed at me, coach.
Who's explaining this to, though?
When people ask, people question it. Have you ever flown first class?
No, it's too much money.
Okay, but
I get business class.
And do you see how sometimes the white people or the people who did not get business class and are passing you to go to economy kind of look at you like,
there was a video.
It is a thing.
There was a video recently. This lady started recording somebody in line because they were in, how they board the flights, was asking, let me see your ticket. Because this is for the, we're boarding, right? Can I see your ticket? And she's like, no.
Oh my, they're not supposed to do that.
But you can't believe that I paid, that you went on Flight Hopper and found your flight for $50, but you can't understand that I just went to Delta.
What airline was there so we could shop them?
No, it was not the airline. It was a white person in line
who can't understand that. Maybe she bought a discount ticket, but doesn't
understand
that.
If it's
discount or not. But Kendra, you paid for a first class
Let me see your ticket.
Yeah.
I think you're in the wrong line. Let me see your ticket.
It's
like
the audacity.
That was a thing that happened.
It's buy one get one free.
Beat her ass.
Or let me see your purse. Is that real?
Is that real?
Is that real?
People do this to y'all?
I literally was in the hair salon with a Kate Spade bag. This old lady was like, is that a real Kate Spade bag? And she said, swear to God, she was like, because my mother-in-law, she left me all these bags, and they say you can tell a real bag because if you rub it and do all this stuff to it, it gets warm. And I'm like, ma'am, yes, it's real. Yes, it is.
Yeah, it happens.
It happens.
Oh my God.
Down to the smallest things. Like, when I carry a designer bag, is that real? Or if I wear designer jewelry, I thought that was
I went to Bali. That must have been expensive.
Mm-hmm.
How much does something like that cost you?
Oh my God, this is just...
It's real.
Disgusting.
It's real.
Yeah.
Super disgusting.
Or if you go to a spa day. Oh, did you? What's the occasion?
A gift certificate?
Yeah. What's the occasion?
Oh yeah.
Bitch, it's Monday and my back hurt. And my heels are rough and I want them to scrub them.
Y'all,
that's it.
This is...
It is
this is traumatic. Mm-hmm. This is why Black people, we can talk about strong Black women. That's a whole nother
story.
Season.
I feel like that little white girl because I'm a strong Black woman.
It's the more and more I talk about these things, the more and more I see the systemic nature of these behaviors, and I try to think about, as I want to make the world more better for people who look like me, how do I start dismantling or giving them the option to choose to be a part of these systems, right? Because you need to know if the system exists and you want to infiltrate it, this is how you play the game.
Right.
But if you want to be outside that system, this is what this looks like.
I'm so conflicted though, like, because entrepreneurship is not for everybody. It's not. And so it's like, now if you're going to be in this environment, you're going to be in this world, then here's the rules. Mm-hmm. And this is what you're going to need to be on the ceiling of success, because you're not going to make it but so far. Mm-hmm. Unless you just happen to get chose and to be one of the few that we got to have one up here, because the higher it goes, the lighter it gets. And so, but then it's like, I don't want to teach you how to play the game, but we're not in position to create the game ourselves. Or are we just haven't tapped in, but we don't have the resources and power to really to exercise that. Or do we? And we don't know what to do because we don't know all the rules. And
we do. I think we do. Mm-hmm. We're just we're not equipped to be able to move that way because of how we were treated and how our minds are conditioned. Right. Mm-hmm. So think about group economics. Mm-hmm. How Asians stop Asian hate, by the way.
Stop white people.
Well, yeah, that too.
Let's move along.
Yeah, it's a Black man who beat up Asian, but nonetheless, Asians are able to move into.
Really? It was.
That's a trigger for me, but let's.
Okay, yeah, we'll go. Asians are able to move into one home, and they'll build up enough money in a pot to push one person out at the same time, right?
Okay.
Black people will never, ever be able to do group economics because they're trying to figure out who's the first person to go out and why. Now we're going to argue, well, why can't you gotta go first? Why she got to do this when it's like everybody's putting all their money into a pot and sacrificing? Mm-hmm. So I really, really respected, Huey P. Newton and all of their ideas of like, y'all, we got to get our own communities and do all of this. But all it took for one person to say, no, I don't want to do that because it ain't my turn yet.
Yeah.
So it dismantled the whole thing. So no, I don't think that we'll ever be able to, because it's always going to be the lone wolf.
You know why that happens? Because I say this and I hesitate in saying this, but we're not savages and we're not ruthless like white people are. We care too much because had you been white in a white group, your ass would have been killed for going against the grain, because you're fucking up the design that we created for us to succeed. And so we're not going to go down for you, we're going to kill you and keep it moving. That's what would have happened. Yes.
Because listen, just again,
we're not built like that, or at least we haven't tapped in.
We have not tapped.
We haven't tapped in.
Yeah.
Because you're done like
because it's all about self. Like, why you gotta have a house? Why can't it be my house? Mm-hmm. Why now it's a competition, but we were always pitted against each other.
I watched this show. I don't think it's out anymore. It's called The Sun, and it's Pierce Brosnan or something. And basically they were stealing the land for oil, and anybody who got in the way was killed. Any means necessary, and that was literally any means necessary. We would never, because we too busy worrying about the rules. What's the law? What's the law on it?
Bring up the bylaws.
Well, it said right here on page 37. Meanwhile,
yeah, and it's always a loophole. That's the thing that we don't realize. The law was meant for the people who are lawful.
Yeah, for the people, which is us.
That's not, because New Jack City is a perfect example.
Yeah, but
And my brother's keeper.
But we follow the book, thus the cult, and that's why we got Kojic and AME and all this stuff. Because everybody gonna follow that book, and they're gonna sit there every Sunday and they're gonna listen to what did the pastor say. Even raise their families based off the pastor.
And the pastor.
Well, this has been an amazing conversation. I'm just going to leave us with some words of Tome Akatunde. And the last part of the article says, reassess your environment and values and change accordingly. And so this is mostly what we've talked about. A popular saying among Black people is that we are our ancestors' wildest dreams. And that goes beyond integration, cars, Wi-Fi, white collar, work from home jobs. Even though we're still tapping into the same emotional intelligence as a survival toolkit as past generations, the backdrops and circumstances are vastly different. And one of those differences is that we can choose to change or opt out of environments that don't serve us. Of course, this is all contingent on multiple factors. After all, we're still in a pandemic and experiencing historically high unemployment rates. But start to think about what showing up as your full self could look like at your office. And if that's not possible, then consider what it would look like to take your talent somewhere else that's more aligned with your values and needs. And think about this, if you're in an environment that regularly proclaims itself to be open and transparent, use the systems that it has in place to hold the company accountable to its values. If you have the energy to carry out the extra emotional labor, okay? So you really do have to count up those costs, because it's something that if you're gonna take on that task, it's gonna cost you something, okay? Being one of few or the only often means being asked to do the unpaid work of representing the entire race, which is in itself its own headache. All right, so using the emotional intelligence that we've acquired to survive in America ourselves is an act of self-love and self-healing in the face of trauma. It's an act of resistance. And Audre Lorde wrote this, caring for myself is not self-indulgence, it is self-preservation, and that is an act of political warfare. So thank you all for listening to The Last of the Millennials, We Probably Right podcast. Remember to share this with all your friends, follow us, rate us 5 stars, comment if you loved it, and we will see you on the other side.
Boom.